Welcome back, friends and patrons. I'm Yvonne Davis, and this is my colleague and friend of 13 years, David Steele. And he is going to give us a little wrap on the holographic universe and holographic consciousness. And this is helping us to understand the level of consciousness that we have labeled turquoise on the spiral dynamics map of consciousness expansion. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, David, and just let the brilliance flow.
Okay. I guess when we do the next video, you can talk more first.
Yes.
All right. So let me just start by saying what a hologram is, because people don't know. I think very few people probably know technically what a hologram at least was initially when it was, when the phrase was the term was coined. Probably has come to mean something very different in our culture. So the word hologram is based on the word whole. And it basically means that every part contains the whole within it. So the best way to describe that is if you were to take, let's say, a pizza and shine a laser on it, on the pizza, and use that to create an image of the pizza etched in a pane of glass. And then you shine the laser through that pane of glass and it projects the entire pizza on the wall. So then you take that pane of glass and you smash it, and you take a small piece and you shine the laser into it. The whole piece, the whole pizza still appears on the wall. You take that, you break it into a little shard. You take that teeny shard, you shine the laser through it, and the whole pizza appears on the wall again. You put that in your pedestal, you grind it till you have a little tiny grain, even microscopic. You take that, you shine the laser through it, and you see the whole pizza on the wall. So every piece contains all of the information to create the whole. And that's truly what a hologram is. So when we talk about the holographic universe, we're talking about at every point within the universe, or we could say anywhere within our consciousness, is the information of the whole. This is the fundamental principle. If you're into Wiccan teachings, they have the as above, so below. That's what it's referring to. In the Hermetic tradition, the hologram and the microcosm and the macrocosm is the fundamental principle underlying Hermetic teachings. That's also the basis of the law of attraction. If you talk about the law of attraction, you are talking about the holographic universe where what you want to manifest, you find the clarity, you find that in yourself, and then you see it reflected in the world about you. As within, so without. It's another version of as above, so below. And so before I say a little bit more about that, I'm curious if you have any comments or stirrings, Yvonne, based on what I just said.
Well, one thought that popped in my mind is I think DNA works the same way, you know, but I don't fully understand it, so I'm not going to try to explain that. I've just heard that DNA works the same way.
Yeah, so let me bring in the warrior teacher teaching a little bit, and then I want to talk a little bit about the physical emphasis on that too. So if you are a fan of the teachings of Don Juan, in his later books, starting with The Eagle's Gift, The Fire from Within, and The Power of Silence, he talks about awareness, and what awareness is, that we are made out of light. Everything in the universe is made out of light. It's made out of fibers of light that are self-aware, that are alive. That's how he describes it. And that when you get to the point where you can perceive this, you realize the light within you is exactly the same as the light around you, that awareness. And then when when your perception, your awareness is stuck in what he calls assemblage point, because it's where you assemble perception, that what happens is where your attention is on the bundles of light within you, then that lights up the exact same bundles of light in the world outside of you, unless you perceive. And in his teaching, it's about moving that assemblage point, about being able to perceive the world differently because we light up or explore different parts within ourselves. That affects our perception, and then we experience different capacities of the universe. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing, as within, so without, as with above, so below. The stuff that's inside of us and the stuff that's outside of us is the same stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's the warrior teaching.
Yes.
Any comments before I talk a little bit about physics, and maybe I'll say something about DNA?
Okay. Well, another thought that popped into my head is this phrase that I've heard, in the consciousness movement, and it goes like this: "You spot it, you got it." And
that's right.
Yeah.
Exact same thing.
And what that means is that if you see someone else doing something that you don't like or that triggers you, you've spotted it, but it also means you got it. And so I've trained myself, and it's not an easy thing to do, because it kind of doesn't feel good. It's unpleasant to spot it. And then I've trained myself to turn that around like a mirror and see myself. I'm like, oh my God, I got it too, That's
right. Yes, when something that happens in the out there world stimulates something in you, mm-hmm. There's that something in you that is in resonance with what's going on in the outer world. And it sets up a vibration, and all of a sudden you become indignant, but also you can become enraptured. You spot it, you got it. So when you witness an act that's compassionate and loving, means you've got that too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in fact, we got all of it.
Yeah.
And the question is, where is it that we place our awareness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that determines how we perceive things. Mm-hmm. So I do a personal practice of, I'm always looking for the perfection in the current moment.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I know some of them quite well, are caught up in finding fault. Ain't it awful? Whatever happens, their attention immediately goes to what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they live lives of constant struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am always looking for the perfection, how things fit, what the lesson is, mm-hmm. Where is the point of ease and flow, mm-hmm. And then I live a life that has a lot of ease and flow. Yeah. So that's getting into the manifestation, the law of attraction stuff. Really, you spot it, you got it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to also talk about a metaphysical concept, which is, just kind of jumping off from what you're saying, as an example, that I've noticed lately that I've been feeling tremendous gratitude, and I notice that I'm in a state of gratitude and joy quite a bit. And my creativity has been flowing really well. And so focusing on that state of gratitude, I really notice it, like, throughout the day, the things that I feel so grateful for. And I remind myself it's almost like a ritual throughout the day, to remind myself to feel gratitude for all the good things that I have in my life, even the simplest things. And even though I'm giving gratitude for them every single day, like waking up naturally in the morning, because I remember when I had a full-time job, and that was one of the worst things. Like, I absolutely could not stand being forced to wake up before I was ready, before I was naturally ready to. It made me angry. It got me started on the wrong foot. And that was something I wanted to change. And so I did achieve that goal. And so I give thanks for that every morning. Like, there are never too many times to give thanks for it, even though it's something very simple, and it's become my new routine. But still, I give thanks for it. I give thanks for the fact that I have a warm, safe place to sleep at night, And I think a lot of people start to take things for granted. And I think it's really important not to, because that state of gratitude is one of the highest vibrations. And it does actually change your reality. So I was sharing that with someone recently about my practice of gratitude, and like going hiking and communing with nature, and the beauty of nature and the clear blue skies. And there's so much to feel grateful for. And going to the grocery store, and where I live, like yesterday, I went to the grocery store in the middle of the day. There was almost no one there. It was very peaceful and quiet. The shelves were full of food. Like, it was just mind-boggling. I wanted to take pictures because I know in other places in the country, they may be experiencing shortages, and I wanted to show, like, it's not that way everywhere. And I talked about how we live, like, we can actually create a dimension in which we live in peace and joy and abundance. And I got smacked down for that because the other person thought that I was just living in some fantasy reality. I couldn't seem to communicate that I'm not living in a fantasy. I'm experiencing gratitude. There's a big difference, So what I meant by the metaphysics is that I do think you actually create that reality around you. As you experience it internally, you create it externally. And but some people don't believe that anyway. So I'll toss the ball back to you, David.
For me, I think maybe I'd use the word tune into rather than create. If you look at the Castaneda teachings, it's like the potential is there. We'll dive into quantum physics for just a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The potential is there at any given moment for the entire spectrum of human experience. Everything we've felt, everything that's been felt, everything that's been said, everything that has been experienced has all happened in the present moment. The present moment is infinite.
Yeah.
And so when we are truly present, then we are in touch with that potential. Anything can manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go a little bit into the quantum physics that there are probability waves.
Mm-hmm.
That all things are possible, some things are more probable. So if you get really clear within yourself and you hone your intention, what that intention does is it interacts with potential experience, increases the probability of a kind of experience manifesting, and then that probability wave pops up out of the potential and it becomes actual, and we experience it. Mm-hmm. So the potential for all this stuff is always there. Mm-hmm. And where we put our intention and how we arrange our perception based on our studies, our practices, mm-hmm. then dances with that potential to create the actual experience. So that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because I could imagine this other person walking into the exact same store at the exact same time of day and having a different experience. So I experienced it as, since there weren't a lot of people there, I experienced it as uh, spaciousness, peace, spaciousness, abundance, ease, because I could move around easily. I didn't have to worry about, trying to get past people. And whereas somebody else might walk in and feel fear, like, where are all the people? And they could interpret that as something scary. And or when I saw massive abundance of food on the shelves, they might go to the one place where there was something missing, and they say, like, look, there's an empty shelf right there. Or they might get upset because they see people wearing masks or see plexiglass. And instead of seeing it as, protection and safety, they could interpret it as something's gone wrong. So I agree with you that it's like where we place our attention is what is how the reality manifests within our consciousness.
Yes, I totally, I think that's a great example. So let me say something else, since you're an astrologer. It's by looking into the microcosm and by studying atoms and studying atoms and studying the way that photons interacted with atoms, that then we looked at the photons coming from stars, and we realized that stars are made out of those same atoms. We didn't used to know what stars were. In fact, there was a time when we used to think that there was a big dome over our head that was black, and someone, like with a pin, had come through and poked holes in that dome. And those holes is where the radiance of heaven, of God's kingdom, showed through onto the earth. And then through that radiance, that light was the emanation of heaven. And that emanation then went down and massaged the earth. And that's why astrology works. Mm-hmm. Because it was the kingdom of heaven coming through in different ways at different places, mm-hmm, and manifesting reality. So when we discovered the atom and studied the atom, we then realized that stars are made out of those exact same atoms. And that literally we human beings, we're made out of stardust. We're all made out of stardust. And then also by studying the atom and studying how a thermonuclear reaction works, all of a sudden we realized how stars give energy. That, what the source of energy in a star is. And so that's by looking into the microcosm, discovering stuff in the macrocosm. By looking out into the macrocosm, and by studying the way stars move, and the interactions, and how the radiation of the stars influenced us, that gave us insight into how gravity functions. That gave us insight into our place in the universe and the rotation of the Earth, that made it possible for us, for example, to launch the Voyager satellite space probe that it visited Jupiter, then it went past Saturn, then it went past Uranus, and then it went past Neptune. And finally, in 2012, it left our solar system. Huge thing. But by studying the stars and by looking into the macrocosm, it gives us insight into what happens in the microcosm. So in a way, it's all a reflection.
Yeah.
And by experiencing it inward and directly, And then looking outward at the reflection, then you see the outer, then you get the whole. Because you have to have the inner and the outer, and when they merge and dance, they create the whole, and that's the holographic universe. And you mentioned DNA, and DNA is made out of 4 different chemicals, just 4 chemicals that combine in different ways. And I think probably we're getting towards the end. I guess I don't have a total wrap on DNA. What I will say about DNA, since you mentioned it, because we've heard about DNA, RNA right now, people are really interested in how microbes work. Microbes were the first form of life. There was microbes living on the earth for billions of years before there was anything more complex in terms of cellular beings like us. DNA doesn't change. It's like the blueprint. And then RNA copies that blueprint and becomes the worker bee that goes out to build the proteins that create the cells that create our bodies. So you have the plan, which is static, the DNA, which is, in a way, it's still, it's immobile. And then you have the RNA that gets instructions from the plan or sees the DNA as the path. The RNA acts on it and then goes out and constructs proteins. And the next thing you know, there's us. So I don't know how that, there's probably a way to fit it into the hologram, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mentioned DNA because I thought I had heard that, you know, any piece of the DNA has the whole blueprint in it, but I don't actually know if that's true.
That is true. That's a good way of putting it. Every cell in your body contains the DNA, and the DNA has the instruction to make anything about part of who you are. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. That's how it fits in. Yay! That's the connection. So every cell, and that's why we were into stem cells. And if you study epigenetics and stuff, or if you're into imaginal cells, I think Bruce Lipton is really into imaginal cells. You're talking about being in an undifferentiated state where all the potential is there, where you haven't committed to any structure yet. The DNA has the potential for any of it. And then you commit to a direction, and then you become crystallized. You become frozen in that direction, and now you're a muscle cell or a hair follicle. But the undifferentiated cell, which is what we start with mitosis and hanging out in the womb and stuff, that commitment hasn't been made yet. So all the potential is there. And every cell does carry the blueprint for the whole.
Yeah, and actually, I think that gives us a perfect segue to our conclusion to this video.
Yes.
So basically what we're saying is that we are imaginal cells to create, we're creating the blueprint for a new world, a new consciousness, and that we, like some people are imagining an apocalypse and the second coming of Christ and Armageddon and all kinds of things like that. Other people maybe are imagining we're going to go back to the way it used to be. I'm imagining that this is divine guidance that has created a pause in which we can imagine a new world that takes us maybe to the level of a turquoise level of consciousness, and what the world might look like, how humanity might relate to each other and to the planet and the environment and all the species, and to see it as relational as opposed to exploitative, and to value caring and self-actualization. And I think we're moving in that direction. That's what I believe.
So let me add an NVC spin on all of this. And I agree, it's time to wind things to an end. So when you talk about the imaginal cell, where you're hanging out with the potential, it's not committed or crystallized to a path yet. And we are in a moment of that, where a lot of the crystallized structures have been shattered. That so their momentum is no longer as omnipotent, and that's a huge opportunity to institute new patterns and start new structures. But anyhow, so to be that imaginal cell and to be undifferentiated, that is exactly what an MVC, observation without judgment, is. As soon as we make a judgment, and then we are committing and we initiate a crystallized pattern. And then the cell is no longer imaginal.
Yeah.
It has started down a specific path. So non-judgment is incredibly liberating, incredibly liberating.
Yeah. I do want to also say that another word is evaluation. And evaluation comes, it's born out of our values. And so, yeah, it's true that, you know, once you you step out of the undifferentiated liminal space where you're simply observing, it's the unmanifested, and then you lock it in. And I'm using the word evaluation to imply that we can also lock in something that is born out of our values, that doesn't have to be critical. You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's something something that we can also create out of our values.
Yeah, that's why authenticity is so important, because it puts us in connection with our core being. And if that's where we put our attention, then we see a stable, consistent world around us that we can trust. Because that's where we have put that intention, the fibers, letting up the fibers that I was talking about. And then we see that in the world around us. So, great chatting with you.
Okay. All right. And that was a fun conversation. I'm sure that people will find it very interesting. We'll have lots of really exciting conversations out of this. So thank you for joining me, David, and look forward to seeing you on the Zoom call. We have a group Zoom call this Friday, May 29th at noon Mountain Time. So I hope you will all join us, and I'll see you there, David.
Pasta la pizza.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.